Hey, Soma, it's so good to be with you tonight. I'm so excited. We have Pastor Mark speaking to us tonight, so our lead pastor of our campus. So excited for you guys to hear an amazing word about fasting. I know it's going to be great. It's going to be good for us. Fasting's difficult. I know I ate today and I love eating, but he's going to break down what is fasting, how do we fast, and why we need to fast, and how it's beneficial for us. So let's pay attention and make sure that we learn a lot.
Hey, Soma. Got a question for you. Does anyone love fasting? Pastor Jordan asked me to talk about a spiritual discipline. He gave me fasting. Lucky me. I don't love fasting. And about 22 days ago, Celia decided to do this 21 days of prayer and fasting thing. And so kind of felt like I should do it, kind of doing the pastoral thing. And one of the things we were told to do is not only to fast, but to give up something. And so I decided that my thing would be to give up eating until I had spent an hour with God. So that was the deal. So I wasn't allowed to eat any day for 21 days until I spent an hour with Jesus in Bible study or in prayer, etc. And so that's what I did. Now, normally fasting does involve food, although there are other kinds of fasts. So if you are medically inhibited from doing a fast, let me encourage you that there are other alternatives. I like food because it gives you energy. I like food because I like to move and I like to run sometimes. And I like food because it tastes super good. You know what I'm saying? And so because I am relatively healthy, giving up food as a fast is actually probably appropriate because I like it a lot. And it sounds like you shouldn't give up things you like, but actually it's the exact opposite because there's multiple benefits for fasting. One of them is not weight loss, all right? That's called dieting. And fasting is different from dieting simply because we give up one thing and we replace it with something else. Dieting, you're just giving up one thing and hoping like the pounds melt off and you look good in a swimsuit in a couple months. I'm talking about giving something up and picking something else up. And so when it comes to fasting, biblical fasting, it's actually about giving something up and replacing the time that you donated to that thing, like eating, with moments of spiritual preparation, like being in the presence of God, studying, learning, prayer, etc. And so the goal is to give up something you would normally be doing and then replacing it. So for the last 21 days of January, that's what I did. I made this commitment. And you know what's amazing? Some incredibly wonderful things happen when you give up one thing to get something else, especially when it comes to God. Most days I was so motivated because I like eating that I actually got into this incredible rhythm of being an hour with God before most of my day got started. There were other days when I got busy, and I had to fast a little longer and eventually find space to get that hour in. But this is what I noticed over the last 21 days. Fasting has some incredible benefits. I never felt disconnected for God for those times. I don't know if you ever struggle with disconnection with God. I don't know if you go up and down in your relationship with Jesus, but imagine being at a point where it just was super consistent. Fasting does that for us because you're actually replacing the time that you normally would give to God to giving it to Him, and it's amazing what the results is. The other thing is I didn't have struggle with belief over the last, do any of you ever struggle with doubts or fear about if God really cares about you or sees where you're at? It's amazing when you dedicate that energy towards Him, where some of those doubts just kind of fade to the background. And the other thing was, I was more productive. I got some stuff done, And I'm always pretty excited when I get some productive stuff, and motivation isn't a problem. And as I'm thinking about, giving something up in an effort to draw near to God, I'm actually reminded that to get to a better place emotionally, for you or for I, or spiritually, or even physically, it often means saying no to something else that's keeping you from actually getting there. As humans, we all want what the world defines as life and living and success and admiration. Some of you want a better physique or a depth in your spirit or character. And when we see that in someone else, a lot of times we need to ask ourselves this question: what are we willing to say no to actually get some of those great things? If you're a Christian, you probably like Jesus, right? You probably admire Him. I mean, he's a pretty legit dude. And you will look at His life and He's powerful and He's sinless and He's deep and everything He says comes with authority and it's beautiful. And it would be easy just to assume that, because He's God, that as a human He didn't have to work at those things. But it's pretty clear that Jesus did the work. He did the work. And sometimes it would be easy for us to believe it was just easy for him. It takes the pressure off us. But he made the hard choices to actually accelerate who he was preparing to be in ministry and life. So let that actually be an encouragement to you. Some of the work is worth doing to becoming what you want to become in God. And Jesus did it. In fact, he fasted. He fasted in an incredible way. We're going to read about it right now in Matthew chapter 4, verses 1 to 11. Ready? Here we go. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." And Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him up to a holy city and had him stand at the highest point of the temple. And he said, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." Again, the devil took him to a high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. "All this I will give you," he said, "if you will bow down and worship me." And Jesus said to him, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." Then the devil left him, and the angels came and attended him. Okay, set this up. This happens before Jesus goes into ministry, like right before. What does he do before he goes into ministry? He goes into the desert. He's doing the work of building himself. He's going to spend 40 days and 40 nights in the desert without food. Please, there's no protein bars, there's no shakes or frappuccinos. He can't get a decent latte anywhere, and he's not sleeping on a Serta mattress either. He's literally probably camping in a dusty cave or in a rudimentary shelter, and for 40 days, he's just saying no to all the comforts. There's no heat, there's no air conditioning. He's camping in a desert in the Middle East. The nights are too cold, the days are too hot, and why would you put yourself through this? That's the question. Forget about that. Why? I mean, how? How does anybody go 40 days or 40 nights without food? And some of you are thinking, man, I can't even go 4 hours without food. That's crazy. Have you ever noticed the arguments you tell yourself when you hear things like this? Like, how could I possibly do this? Why would I want to? I feel like a lot of times we tell ourselves what we cannot do, whether it's give up food or anything else. But it's not true, actually. We argue it's too difficult, but it's actually not true. Unless, of course, you have a medical condition or whatever. For most of us, the only condition that I think we struggle from is that we repeatedly convince ourselves of our weakness, so we don't have to do something that requires that kind of strength or sacrifice. And why would we? So maybe sacrifice is actually the real issue. We live in this culture of comfort, everything's so accessible. Sacrifice isn't actually something we need to do very often. We often tend to avoid it unless we're convinced it's something that we want. We actually will sacrifice to get something we want, as opposed to maybe sacrifice to give up something so we can become something better. How many times would you put away a little extra cash so you can get that video game, or you'll sacrifice going out with your friends so you can be with somebody else? We say no to yes to sacrifice when it benefits us, but what if there's a benefit we're not seeing? What if we're missing the benefit of becoming something we always want to be? Somebody who doesn't struggle so much with doubt or fear or faith, somebody who actually isn't a victim of worry and anxiety, somebody who actually lives with more peace and more purpose. What if you actually, to get there, you need to give something else up so that you can grab a hold of something better? And I actually think this is what Jesus is. Saying no to something, saying no to yourself to do something difficult often actually is the very pathway to make you a better human and enjoy a better life. When I think about when I think about how often some of you struggle with, faith or the way you feel about yourself, the way you struggle with fear or doubts, in God and his love for you and your future, I can't help but wonder if there are some things you could say no to that would help you overcome that. Some studies have recently suggested that students who actually fast social media are 40% happier within a week of that fast. They give up social media. They stop surfing TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and all of it. And we would tell ourselves, oh no, I could never do that. That is so hard. But is it? I know what it is to be a human. I know what it is to talk myself into believing that I can't make these hard sacrifices. But what if it is 40% happier just in 7 days? That's crazy talk, right? We are this broken species. We so often would rather tell ourselves that something is too hard than actually admit the real difficulty is saying no to ourselves. So back to Jesus. 40 days. I could never do that. Maybe that's what you think. What about 40 hours? Could you do 40 hours? Would you do 40 hours? The question is, why would you? Well, let's look at Jesus. He did the 40 days. Why would he fast at all? Let's settle one thing before we get started on the why. Dude was hungry after 40 days. He was feeling it. I know he's God, and it's easy to recognize that he's like superhuman Jesus or whatever, but that's not true. He actually embraced humanity when he came to the planet. He felt like we felt. He got hangry, probably, without sinning, praise God. But he got emotional and weak because of physical realities. Giving up food for 40 days was not easy. And he so put away this notion that somehow because Jesus is like Jesus, that he could do this. He actually had to war with all those things, the grumbly tummy, all of it, the weakness, all of it. He dealt with it for 40 days. But he says no to something. He says no to comfort and yes to fasting and prayer in an effort to hold on to something better. Why? Why would he fast? Launching into ministry, into the war for the soul of humanity. Here's 3 things. First thing I think he thinks is, well, he says, the Bible says actually in this passage, he says he was led by the Spirit into the desert. So he actually was commanded by God to give some time and energy to just being in the presence of God. So he was led by the Spirit. So he enters into this fast, number 1, to honor God. God is asking him to prepare for life. He's asking him to prepare for ministry. He's asking him to prepare to reveal the glory of God to people. And so now he has to do the work of building inner strength by saying no to the things that his flesh wants. His flesh wants food. His body wants food. His brain wants food. His taste buds want food. And he says no. Why? To build something deeper, to build something stronger. Here's what I want you to think about. If you could say no to the demands of your flesh, imagine what you can say yes to. And better than that, if you say no on God's behalf, imagine what he can say yes to you about. Jesus puts God first. Fasting is an announcement that God is literally on the throne of his life. And when we do it, that's a revelation that he's on the throne of ours as well. That the things you believe to be central to your life, the things like food, companionship, comfort, whatever, your recreation, your entertainment, all of it, that none of it really is important as God. And if you tackle all your arguments, those self-made things that tell yourself why you can't do what you can do, and then compare it to the reality of the God who made you and formed you and put you on the planet and sustains your life, somehow that you need all those things instead of him is a disastrous lie, and it gets us into a lot of trouble. Gets me into a lot of trouble. When Jesus says, why fast? He just points at his Father and our God. And he says, I'll do whatever it takes to honor him first because he's literally the biggest deal in my life. The things we say we can't live without are not nearly as meaningful as the God who gave us life in the first place. And when we honor God, he can and will honor us. Here's my challenge. First, why? Why not? Why not fast because of who he is? Because he's God and you're not. Because there are nights you wander alone in the darkness, wondering if he really cares. And it's because you've invested most of your energy feeding your mind on a screen or into relationships that you don't even have permission to be in, or into activities that actually derail your relationship with God. And you wonder why you struggle with faith or doubt or fear. And all the time you give into something that actually isn't giving you life. You're actually stealing life from yourself and purpose. But then you have this God who actually is looking down on you with this incredible capacity for mercy and love and grace and says, I will bless and honor you if you honor me. There's an incredible confidence and faith that rises in us. So here's Jesus doing 40 days in the desert, prepping for the first of many battles in his ministry, which he'll go toe-to-toe with the enemy. And he says, the first thing first, I'm going to give this time to honoring God. What if God wants to say a big yes to your life? What if he wants to trust you with a beautiful and powerful life, but he can't get you to say no to anything that your flesh is demanding? Like, you have to have what you have to have. And you have to have all these things that are out there, but you don't necessarily see his value for your life. When you say yes to everything that's out there and you don't make him the center of your life, you're saying no to what God will give you. Let's just keep that in perspective. But what if he wants to say yes to you? What if he wants to give you this beautiful, powerful life that he gave to Jesus? There's no shortcut to this incredible life. There really isn't. You're in a society that teaches you that life is shortcuts, but there's no shortcuts. Not to becoming an incredible athlete, not to becoming incredibly intelligent, not to becoming really successful in any kind of apparatus in life. You can't take the shortcuts. You have to do the prep work. And it's the same thing with a walk and with God. It's the same thing with faith. The reason you will see an incredible life in the life of Jesus is because for the sake of God, he refused the shortcut. Why fast? To honor God, because he longs to honor you. Secondly, at the end of his fast, Jesus faces this incredible encounter with Satan. And Satan attacks Jesus in the same way he attacks us. Now, he's not going to tempt you to do some of the things he asked Jesus to do, but he's going to attack the same parts of your life. Satan attacks him with bread. It makes sense. Jesus is literally starving. He's so hungry. And then he attacks him later with doubting God's love for him, and then he attacks him with power. So to this very hungry man, the enemy first says, given your weakness, tell these stones to become bread. And so he says he tempts him with the need to feed the physical hunger in the midst of this fast that Jesus has dedicated this time and space to honor God. But I want you to notice, have you noticed when you're really hungry, there's also emotional weakness? Like, people are really hungry are often easily angered, they're impatient. Even studies show that they slur their speech when they're talking. Have you noticed how emotional you are when you are either hungry or you are scared or there's something else missing in your life? The enemy is so smart when it comes to Jesus. He not only goes after this bread, he goes after his emotions as well. He wants to get him to react in his weakness. In his weakness, physically, he's also struggling emotionally. And a lot of times, that's true too. Sometimes we struggle emotionally and we feel weak physically or spiritually. And so the enemy comes in the same way. He comes after you in your moment of weakness. Have you recognized your weakness? Like when you are weak or tired or lonely or hungry, have you recognized what you reach for in those moments? Sometimes maybe it's a big bag of potato chips. Sometimes, it's a relationship in the wrong direction that, just makes you feel somewhat better about yourself, but it ain't right. Sometimes it's something worse. Surfing the net for something inappropriate or just all kinds of stuff. Have you noticed that it's actually weakness reaching for those things? It's not strength. The world tells you it's strength, but it's actually weakness. It's a weakness of substance, of character. And we all do it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not staring at you as the perfect human being. I'm actually admitting to the moments. There are moments my flesh tempts me. And in my weakness, I reach for something to feed my flesh, the wants that I have, the desires that I have. And some of those desires actually promote distance between me and God and promote doubt and fear. And in this moment for Jesus, though, he resists when Satan comes at him with this temptation. And it builds something in him, It's amazing what happens when you resist yourself. You grow internally. Your faith in God begins to grow as you feel yourself standing in a moment of truth. It's actually pretty cool. If you ever want to build faith and not wander in darkness and doubt, then just take a moment to stand. Say no to yourself and say yes to God. So the devil can't get him with the bread thing, so he moves on. And he says, throw yourself down from this temple. He takes him up to the temple and he says, throw yourself down. And he's basically saying, and the angels, they'll catch you. He's basically saying this, make God prove that he loves you. How often do you second guess God? How often do we, when we don't get our own way, when things aren't going right way, we want God to rush in and prove to us that he actually loves us. And we judge his love by whether he gives us our way. Give me what I want, God, then I know you really love me. Is that true? Because some of the things you actually want are actually really self-destructive. If God gave them to you, then you'd be able to blame him for breaking you down even further. And when God refuses to give you the things that actually destroy you, it's actually this beautiful love that he's actually demonstrating to you. But sometimes we, in our weakness, actually say, no, you don't love me. Prove to me you love me by giving me what I want. Like he's this big cosmic Santa Claus who's just waiting for you to sit on his knee and ask for all kinds of things. But he's not. He's better than that. He's got this deep character. And he loves us, even when we think we're entitled to get from him what he wants to give, what we want him to give us. But Jesus refuses to test the love of God. He refuses to take that position, and Satan gets frustrated again. And while he resists, he's strengthened again. I will not doubt you in the moment of weakness or fear. In the middle of my fast, in the middle of this battle, as I'm actually surrendering my will to honor God, I will not test him. I will not fall for that. And strength rises. And it rises in you too when you refuse to let the enemy cause you to second guess God's love for you. And then finally he says, okay, takes him up to a mountain. He says, okay, here's what I'll do for you, Jesus. If you just give me a little bit of worship, just look around. It's all yours. And he tempts him with this power and a shortcut to getting influence over the globe. He doesn't have to go through the cross. He can just actually get worship right away. All he has to do is surrender worship. Let me ask a question. What do you sacrifice for a little worship? What do you post online? What will you do? Who do you hang out with to just get a little acceptance and attention? Who will you date? Where will you go? What will you do for self-promotion or acceptance? And every time we sell out for a shortcut, we weaken from the inside out. But not Jesus. Again, he says, no. I will worship the Lord my God only. What about you? He stares down his enemy at the end of his fast. And again, his faith grows again. That's the point of this moment. Self-denial produces deeper resolve, character, and faith. And when we talked earlier about, hey, like, do you ever struggle with doubt or fear? Maybe it's because you're not willing to put down some of the things that don't help you grow closer to God, to take a hold of God. That's why we fast. We fast so we can resist the temptations that come against us. So we fast first to honor God. And then we fast second to stay in the fight, to not be tempted away from doubting God. And then finally, Jesus exits the desert fast, and immediately he launches into ministry. And from his life is this powerful, incredible amount of words and miracles and wisdom and authority that comes from him. From 40 days with God, overcoming the enemy, and then launching into the most incredible 3 years that's ever been witnessed on the planet. And the reason why is you and me. He fasts to restore us in relationship to God. He fasts so he can take a hold of something powerful and reproduce it in his life. Take a hold of God and his Spirit and his grace. The why of his fasting is tied to now his dedication to God and the results that becoming someone that brings life to other people. So here's your last why. Ready? You let go of what's on the planet to take a hold of what God offers you so that you can be to the planet what they desperately need. The life and grace of Jesus through your life. Your beautiful and powerful life is tied to your willingness to sacrifice a little, to put down some of the things that not accelerate your relationship with God and grab a hold of him until your faith is accelerated, and then you are transformed in character and in personhood in a way that sees you reveal Jesus to the planet. Fasting, prayer, studying the Word, there are all these things, these spiritual disciplines that Pastor Jordan's been talking about. It's all about letting go of some things and picking up other things that actually change us into the people that reveal Jesus. And it's in that place where you no longer struggle with things like a depth of self-esteem and a fear that's paralyzing and a doubt that God cares for you. It's when you do the work, but if you refuse to do the work, you will always be tossed back and forth by your brain and your emotions and the influence of society. But God's got better for you. Why do we fast? It's funny that fasting feels like loss, but it's actually so much like winning, because it's amazing the strength you discover in God when you decide that he'll be the biggest deal in your life. And you're so willing to honor him that you'll put down some of the stuff that you think your life needs or wants to get what your life really needs. And that's his influence, his presence, his peace, and his power. Why do we fast? Because we don't want to be a slave to the physical part of us. We want to be a servant to the depths of our spirit as they serve Jesus. I pray God will lead your discussion and you're inspired to let go of some stuff so that you can get a hold of what God has for you. Peace, Soma. Be real.
Well, thanks so much, Pastor Mark, for speaking about fasting. Soma, we absolutely love you. We miss you. Hopefully we get a very favorable report this Friday from Dr. Bonnie Henry. Hope that we get to meet again soon. But even if we don't, we're going to meet right now. In the chat, there is going to be the Zoom links to jump into a life group. So go ahead, jump into a life group, and we will see you next week.